Evening.
Okay, let's start again. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, how are you this evening, Lorelei?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Great. Good to see you. You had a good week?
Yes.
Yes? It's not been too difficult?
No, everything is fine. No problem at all.
Okay. So, onwards today. All right. So, let me just check my... Oh dear. One moment, please. One moment.
No.
Oh, did it go black?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
I hadn't tried that before. All right. Ooh. All right, so here we go. So, can you remember what we looked at last week?
No, I don't.
Okay,
About the card, the Emperor at the end. That's all.
that's right. Yes,
Yes.
we looked at chart aspects, symbology, numerology, and the alphabet.
Yes.
Yeah. So this week we're going to take another look at reincarnation from the standpoint of the latest research and studies. I'd like to point out that if we were to talk of quantum physics or nuclear fusion, or even the latest engineering breakthroughs, then that would be difficult to understand. And reincarnation does take a lot of explanation.
Yes.
But like other esoteric subjects we talk of, it is grounded in natural laws.
Yes.
And as a backdrop, I can just add this in quickly. As a backdrop, do you know anything about the Hindu caste system?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yes. One way of looking at reincarnation is that spirits or people come back and they reincarnate into different castes because of their development. Yes. And that's basically why they have the caste system. Yes. Because people have a certain development and they come back into the same development. Yes. But that's a side issue. So a full and lengthy explanation could take many hours over months of meetings. However, I will keep it fairly simple and brief. This research would not be possible for just anyone. So like an electrician or mechanic, you need not only the know-how, but also the right tools to progress. Having the correct thought processes becomes important. So knowing the reality of seeing auras, as you can do, yes, which we call seeing electrically, knowing of the natural laws, knowing of elemental life, knowing of astral projection, and things we have looked at in the first year, etc. Now here it becomes of the utmost importance, yes? Even if, just as a basic level to approach this type of research. Can I ask you, Lorelei, do you actually consider reincarnation a possibility?
Well, I don't remember about anything about my past lives or my past life, but I did saw some documentaries about this topic, and there were a lot of people who gave records of their death and so on. They were able to come back and meet their families, so they were. It's actually pretty interesting to see. Yeah, I did saw a lot of examples like this, and yes, I take this this idea in consideration. Yes, I do take this idea in consideration. Now let's talk about the Buddhist side. Can we reincarnate and become like a butterfly or I don't know, another insect or something? I'm not so sure that I embrace this. However, I do embrace like all the forms of energy that we can experiment in this life from our past lives that probably we will like a butterfly or whatever. So yeah, I guess there are possibilities where you might feel certain things that you gain in your past lives experiences. Yeah, does it make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So it's not a completely incoherent subject for you. Yes.
No. Well,
Okay, that's good. Now, I'm not saying here. Let's see. I'm not really saying here that I have all these abilities to do these things, but I do know people that do. So, as an individual, what I can say is I have stated, as I have stated for many years, that I am a spiritual man in the way of these abilities, and these abilities are developing naturally, which I will come to later. Now, to continue, rather than using the term a soul, we shall use the term a core. Yes. Now, the core of a living being. A more spiritual point of view is nature gave you a core, not God gave you a soul. But that's, I mean, you can also have that idea in mind. God gave you a soul, but I'd rather think that nature gave you a core.
right.
Yes, and creation gave you a core.
Yes.
Yes. However, you do have an elemental part in your core, and there is an elemental called God. Yes.
Yes.
So we are part elemental.
Yes.
Yeah, part God, part elemental God. Yes. So
Yes.
which is a nature spirit. Yes. So that's a creational point of view, not a religious one. Now, in a first life, we have a newbie core, which is made from 3 parts. The first part, or vector, is an elemental part from the planet. Yes. The second part is basically in 2 parts, like 2 sides of a coin. That part is called your unique individuality and your identity. Yes. These are 2 parts that make 1 part. Thirdly, your planetary being. Thus, you are a human being comprised of those parts with a purpose. You become a unique entity of self. Yes. Now, I did a little drawing. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see this okay?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Ooh.
A triangle, but I don't see what's written because it's like in a mirror. So
Oh, okay.
words. Yeah, we just if you can read us, that's all.
Okay,
Otherwise we can put the triangle and the circle in.
okay, in the top we have individuality, stroke
Yes.
identity, and at
Yes.
the bottom, elemental and being,
Yes.
and in the middle,
Okay. Core.
yeah, you have the real self.
Real self. Okay.
Yes, which is
Yes.
different from having an ego self, which is created, which is another creation that comes from the culture. Yes,
Right.
from all the different roles you play. Yes,
Yes.
and so well, we'll go into that a bit later on. So we live in a sequence: newbie, rebirth, reincarnation, alternative, newbie, reborn, idea of a musician, a reborn in repetition, may or may not eventually result in reincarnation. Yes, a reborn is someone that sort of lives the same sort of life over and over again, like a musician, a pianist, even a cook. Yes, somebody who likes cooking. Now, the second life can also be rebirth. In other words, the same life again and again. Yes, they say you can live 1,000 lives. Yes, the example of a musician or the Groundhog Day film. Did you see that film, the Groundhog Day film?
I believe I do. Yeah, it's been a while, but I think I did. Yes.
Yeah, he has lots of chances to improve his worth. He keeps coming back. Yes, that's an example of a rebirth, and he finally makes it, and he finally breaks through into another level. Now, there are two possibilities on the second life. That rebirth can continue rather than going into reincarnation. So the planet creates the elemental part like a tree would create pollen. Yes, there is always plenty of these elemental orbs issued or released by the planet at any moment, which go to all different life forms: microscopic, floral, insect, animal, and human. This core, a being in which to live or it dies. Yes. In a
Yes.
human body, it depends on how successful that life form is in its planetary purpose to gather energy, because the whole body is like a battery to recharge the spiritual life. Now, when the body dies, that first life core may die too. But if it has enough strength, it will be reborn. Yes. So we have two new words or concepts: a newbie and a reborn. If the life of the reborn successfully gathers enough energy, then it is able to reincarnate, maybe even enough strength to reincarnate as a human. Yes, if it's been I don't know, a dog or a horse or a whale. Yes, then it can, if each life is successful, reincarnate as a human. The reincarnation would normally be back into its own family tree. So we talk about family trees. A member of its own family, but the competition may be too strong, where the only option is to find another being, any being, to recharge its energy. So you can see the bodies as batteries or core chargers. Yes, core chargers. Now, we have looked at the levels of the astral domain from the lowest level, level 7, a heaven for creepy crawlies, to level 1, The family tree would have family members at all the levels, but the top levels would be in the ethereal domain. Here would be an almost immortality for the course to live. Yes, up in the elemental, not elemental, the ethereal domain, longer life is possible. The lower levels would feed the highest level by simple connection, like the cells in the tree. Yes.
Yes.
So if you're at the top of the family tree, the whole family's feeding you. So you you get their energy, so you don't have to go into rebirth and reincarnation. Yes.
That's super interesting. Yes.
It's like being in heaven, I suppose. Yes. Or a family heaven. Yes.
Yes.
But the lower levels would have to reincarnate often to recharge and return to the tree. As long as the lower levels recharge, they can be considered immortal. Yeah.
Right.
If you keep recharging every 70 years, then that's a kind of immortality. Yes. However, it may happen that core isn't successful in finding a new body and depletes to nothing. Yes. On the other hand, a core may find a body that is able to regenerate and refine itself so that it is not dependent upon the family tree. Yes. In some very rare cases, it may even refine itself to the highest levels of the astral light, or even become refined enough to find its own independent quasi-immortality. Yes. But will always be dependent on the planet which provides its sustenance, so that it is basically planetary reincarnation. Now, as you know, you can obtain more information on reincarnation from the site versal.com. Yes, you've had some meetings there, and you can get more info on the Versal Tarot Pack on the versaltarot.com. Yes. Today, rather a new development as we are in the cusp of a new century, a new millennium, another reincarnational structure has been developed, that of reincarnating at a sun level. Yes. So it's reincarnation has also developed, perhaps from a Christian viewpoint seen in the Bible, when in the story or myth, of Jesus, however you look at it, a man who may have lived some 2,000 years ago, but then again, it may have just been a clever spiritual fiction of possibility. I wasn't there, but from my research, it seems more likely to have been a story created and piggybacked on many different stories, like Osiris, yes, the Egyptian, Zoroaster, Attis, Krishna, Mithra, and Joseph with his coat of many colors. Yes, an amalgamation of many different stories. That's the way I see the biblical stories of Jesus Christ, anyway. However, I do believe that there was a man that was like Jesus, even if he wasn't exactly how the scriptures proclaim him to be. Yes. So I think by faith, yes, you can believe that. Now, there's a link provided for that, different stories that were used or could have been used for Jesus. And I'll put that under the YouTube video. and it'll be on the text for the Thinkific members. Now, which brings me to another of my beliefs, yes, which is to live by and be what I am, notably a human being with a spiritual capacity. Yes, it does seem highly likely that Jesus is a 4th century Roman created myth. It was most probably an evolved version of the Zoroaster and similar myths put together in the Council of Rome and took many years to create from the year 313 AD. However, there are some spiritual and cosmic texts incorporated in the Bible that we can understand from an analogy point of view. These more cosmic texts lend an authenticity to the Jesus story. Whilst the Gnostics texts at that time were labeled heresy and outlawed by the Romans. Yes, and there's probably more truth in the Gnostic text than we give them credit for. Now, for instance, by refinement and development, it is possible to develop what can be called a Christ consciousness. And this is based on love your neighbor as you would love Jesus or yourself as a living being. Yes. From this, and probably from much personal sacrifice, sacrificing your old ideas for better ones, yes, it is possible to become a ball of light, or rather reincarnate at sun level, an evolution of our planetary ideologies, yeah? As portrayed in the Christ story, when the light that Jesus had become talked to Jesus on the road to Damascus. Yes, it seems that Jesus became a ball of light. But let's not get carried away by the holies here. Christ in this analogy could and would also be the Christos fluid created by your own brain, yes, to activate your pineal gland. Such may be considered heresy by the church, but from my own experience, it is as real as a new day sunrise. Yes, the pineal gland can activate, and it does activate, and I've heard many stories, and it's activated in me also. Now, as you develop and refine quite naturally, you will encounter from time to time your real self. Until you live in your real self, almost, yeah, I say almost all the time, and let go of the roles you play out throughout the year to maintain an existence in the cultural life. Yes, I mean, you still need your roles because you have to pay the rent or the mortgage or whatever. So you still need those roles. So you can't really let go of them. But if you are aware of them and you know how to reach your real self, that makes a difference. The role of you as an academic, for example, or as a worker, a manager, or executive in the culture, blind everything except the goal set for you in whatever corporation you may be involved with. Yes. Lots of people find a purpose in a corporation. Yes. And when they die, all that they've created goes back to the corporation. Yeah. So they lose it. Now, that person, for example, that drives your car to work becomes a substitute for the real you, a role you have to play, but can you find yourself in that role, rushing from one role to another all day long, hardly having a spare moment for yourself, simply sighing with relief as you slip into sleep at night, to recommence with the sound of the alarm clock until retirement, really, when it becomes harder still to find your real self, the real you. At this sun level of reincarnation, you actually grow in your own body, your own sun level embodiment. So we're talking about crystallizing something, an embodiment that must live at sun level outside the planet, that your consciousness can live in, and is really considered immortal at sun level, free from the constraints of planetary life. As beautiful as the planet life may be, the sun level embodiment is twice as free and magnificent. So I'll finish with a couple of stories from my own experience. After having been on the creational pathway for many years and knowing from experience much about freedom in the astral domain, my mind suddenly slipped into the ethereal domain. I had over many years developed and refined my mind naturally to this new level. I may have been about 38 at the time. At the time, my mind experienced the refined nature of the ethereal domain. Yes. I could sense that up here was lodged the highest level of the Catholic Church. It was really very fine, far removed from what one might experience in a church. And really, that isn't a very high level, yes, in the scheme of things. The cosmic part of the Bible refers to the promise of life, to its possibility. If I were to put a biblical verse to this experience, which for me seems over the rainbow of the astral domain, in the clouds, so to speak, it would be a biblical verse, and they shall meet Jesus up in the clouds. Yes, it's a development, a mind development. 1 Thessalonians 4:17. After that, we who are still alive and left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Yes, because like I was saying, the ethereal domain is close to immortality for the spiritual life. So getting up there, that's great. Of course, we are talking of the myth created by the church, an analogy for Christ, which is the possibility for anyone who takes the spiritual journey. However, the church, with constant prayers over the centuries, has created an entity that you could call, Jesus Christ. It's an entity fabricated, yes. But the entity lives in the Vatican and only at planetary level. There most probably was a man called Jesus who had some miraculous powers, but many stories were then added to that man's life to create the myth and the religion. The next relevant experience for me was that of the growth and birth of a sun level elemental form in my inner life. A very powerful experience, easy to remember, as I was in the middle of a French language class in France, the year 2009. So I was 51 years old at the time. someone I know asked me, because I manage the spiritual journey, if I was a sinner. I replied, I think I'll leave that sort of spirituality to the church, being a sinner. Now, because you can rise above that. If we say this spiritual journey is an analogy to pilgrim progress, then like pilgrim, we have left the morality of the church behind and the whole idea of sinners. Yes. And at the beginning of this journey, in the first year, I said that this is not a spiritual journey, but the lead up to it. However, at the end of the first year, like pilgrim, you received a piece, electronic piece of paper, a scroll, the first year certificate. So this year is passing through the wicket gate. Do you think you have already passed through the wicket gate?
I believe we did, yeah.
Okay. Now yet another of my beliefs is the belief in myself that as a human being, as a spiritual man, I will succeed. Yes. Not only getting through the wicket gate, but all the way to my eventual spiritual freedom. Yeah. That promise of life itself and further. I will be one of the many that succeed in obtaining this promise. Okay, so as a final thought for today, the Pentagon has admitted officially in an article release by the press that UFOs do exist. And they have found off-world vehicles. Yes. Now, as I said in the first year, the universe is teeming with life. So I have sent you, I will be sending you a link to the article, and the link is provided on the PDF. The article is Intelligencer News by Adam K. Raymond, July 24th, 2020. That's when it came out. The Pentagon has reportedly found off-world vehicles not made on Earth. There's a link for that.
Thank you.
However, one must consider what has been hidden from us in the story. Yes, but we'll leave that for another day. Okay, so bye for now. Hope to see you next week, but don't go away. I'll just pause the video and we can have a chat.
Bye everyone, and happy birthday, Sagittarius.
Okay, bye everyone. We're gonna have a little chat. Okay.